It felt normal at the time, and that's the strange part. Morning light crept through thin curtains, and by the time the door clicked shut behind us, the day was ours. Parents had a rough idea of where we might be, but not a map, not a schedule, just trust. Streets were playgrounds, time stretched endlessly, and nobody seemed worried. Looking back now, it's astonishing how much simply went unquestioned. Things we barely noticed then would raise eyebrows today. Stay with this story, because some moments you'll remember instantly, and others may surprise you. More lies ahead, waiting quietly still. To understand why it all felt so ordinary, you have to picture Britain as it was then. The years after the war shaped a country that valued getting on with things, making do, and trusting one another. Communities were tighter. Neighbors knew names, routines overlapped, and life spilled naturally into the street. There were fewer rules written down, but many unspoken ones quietly followed. Childhood in that world wasn't wrapped in constant supervision. It was seen as training for adulthood, a time to learn judgment, confidence, and self-reliance through everyday experience. Children were expected to adapt, to cope, and to find their own way, because that was how adults had learned to. Parents were busy rebuilding lives, working long hours, and relying on community eyes as much as their own. Today, childhood is carefully planned, scheduled, and monitored, often with the best intentions. Back then, it simply unfolded, and because everyone shared that same mindset, very little felt unusual at all. To understand the freedoms that followed, we first have to understand this quieter, tougher, trusting Britain. It shaped the childhood memories we still carry, quietly explaining why so much freedom once passed without comment and rarely questioned at all. Once breakfast plates were cleared, the day opened up like a promise. We stepped outside and simply went, drifting from street to street, garden to pavement, making plans on the move. Nobody checked watches. Nobody asked for updates. The neighborhood itself became the boundary, loosely understood and rarely discussed. Games were invented on the spot. Rules changed mid-afternoon, and disputes were settled without adults stepping in. We learned quickly what worked and what didn't, not through warnings, but through experience. If you went too far, you found your way back. If something went wrong, you dealt with it and carried on. There was an unspoken expectation that you would manage. Looking back, it's almost funny how little supervision there was. Parents assumed you'd be fine, and most of the time, you were. Today, such freedom feels startling. Back then, it was just childhood, unfolding naturally, hour by hour, until the streetlights flickered on, quietly signaling it was time to head home. No calls, no messages, just trust lingering in the air, waiting patiently for tomorrow to begin again once more. Play didn't arrive in boxers or with instructions. It grew out of whatever was nearby, a patch of ground, a wall, a railing, a quiet corner of the street. Ordinary places became extraordinary through imagination alone. Cold metal bars numbed small hands in winter. Summer tarmac warmed through thin soles, and minor knocks were brushed off with a shrug. Children adapted constantly. If something broke, the game changed. If someone fell out, they were replaced or welcomed back 5 minutes later. Sharing, negotiating, and problem-solving weren't lessons. They were habits formed without noticing. Laughter echoed between houses, carrying further than any shouted warning ever could. Today, play is often planned, padded, and supervised, designed to remove uncertainty. Back then, uncertainty was the point. It sharpened creativity and independence in quiet ways. Those improvised afternoons didn't just pass the time. They shaped how children thought, reacted, and connected. And as play spilled beyond gardens and playgrounds, it gently led into spaces. Adults saw all of this through a very different lens. To them, childhood noise was just the sound of life carrying on. Children roaming, climbing, exploring felt ordinary, woven into the rhythm of the day like washing lines and delivery vans. There was little sense that every moment needed managing. Many routines simply blended into the background. Older children kept an eye on younger ones. Neighbors noticed if something seemed amiss. Trust wasn't discussed, it was assumed. What we might question today barely registered then, because it had always been that way. Somewhere along the line, that confidence shifted. Concerns grew, expectations changed, and childhood slowly became something watched more closely. Looking back now, it's hard not to wonder when that turning point arrived. When did everyday freedom become something to reconsider? Answering that means reflecting not just on rules, but on how society itself began to see children differently, setting the stage for deeper feelings these memories still stir. What did that freedom give us, and what did it quietly take? For many, it built confidence that still lingers today. You learned to judge distances, read situations, and trust your own instincts. Those lessons weren't taught, they were absorbed, one ordinary afternoon at a time. Memories formed deeply because they were earned, not arranged. But that freedom also rested on chance and shared responsibility. It worked because neighbors watched loosely, because children looked out for one another, because most days ended well. There's no need to romanticize it or criticize it. It belonged to its moment, shaped by circumstances that no longer exist. What remains is the feeling, a sense of capability, of having been trusted before we even knew the word for it. That trust stayed with us, quietly influencing how we face the world today. And it explains why these memories still feel so vivid inside us. Would it ever happen today? Childhood now runs by timetables, reminders, and careful planning, with adults never far away. It's safer, tidier, and endlessly organized. Yet something quieter has changed. Back then, freedom filled the gaps, teaching lessons without announcing them. Was it better, or simply different? Perhaps the answer lives in memory, not policy. Share what you remember, the ordinary moments that stayed with you, and tell us how those days feel now in our shared British story together.